The second time we've seen that car this season. Championship leading AF Corse Ferrari, passing Thoras and Michele Rugolo, lining up a little bit lower down the grid than they perhaps would have wanted to. This then is how they line up in full ahead of this 70-minute race. Prent and Balzan, what a strong front row. And the same for row 2, two ex-single-seater stars in the form of Barber and Gia Maria, both of whom at the very top of their game. Matthias Russo and Sean Balfe could well figure as this race unfolds. And then onto row 4, passing Thoras and Mads Rasmussen. Again, watch for the Thoras Rugolo car coming through the order. The new Radical RXC of James Abbott and Shahi Nouri could figure strongly, and Rafael Unzurazaga makes a very welcome return to the International GTOpen in the second of the Radicals. So away goes the pace car as the car's about to set off on their green flag lap. If you've never seen an International GTOpen before, to explain what we've got to look forward to, it's a 70-minute race. There is a pit window that opens once we get 28 minutes into proceedings, and they've all got to make a mandatory pit stop. And the way that performance is balanced out in this championship is that the drivers on the podium from the preceding races get additional time added to their pit handicaps, which adds an additional element of strategy. So it is the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren of Alvaro Prent and Miguel Ramos on pole position. They come into today's race second in the championship standings, just a point behind Rugolo and Thoras, but yet to win a race so far this year. But today could well be the day. Alongside them on the front row of the grid is the extremely rapid Villorba Corse Ferrari in the hands of the former Grand Am GT champion Alessandro Balzan. Balzan has been saying that he really enjoys this Silverstone circuit, enjoys the high-speed challenges. And there is his co-driver Nicola Bonucci, who'll take over just over halfway through the race. It's the AF Corse Ferrari of Raffaele Giammaria, the black car with the orange stripes. And then I think we should watch for both the Balfe Ferrari and indeed the AF Corse Ferrari passing Thoras to show strongly in the second half of the race. There is the big thumbs up from Miguel Ramos. He will be taking over from Alvaro Prent, probably towards the back end of the pit window as they search for their first victory of the season. Although for Ramos, with an eye towards the championship, consistency is really what he's aiming for, because last year he was the winningest driver, but unreliability cost him the standings. There is James Abbott in the first of the Radicals. See how he progresses. So we're coming to the end of the formation lap ahead of the fifth race of the International GTOpen season. And what a first couple of rows we have got. We've got the McLaren of Alvaro Prent, then the Villorba Corse Ferrari of Alessandro Balzan, the ART Lamborghini of Alvaro Barber, and the AF Corse Ferrari of Raffaele Giammaria. Well, Alvaro Barber knows the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit well from his days in Formula Renault 3.5 litre competition, and he is getting to grips and really helping to develop that Lamborghini, which is steadily moving towards the front of the field. So if he can keep the spins to a minimum, which he just got caught out a little bit as he settles the aerodynamic setup of that car in Estoril, then he could well feature as the race begins to unfold. So they head through Brooklands and into Luffield. Rolling starter course, the silver Vodafone McLaren of Prent, the black Villorba Corse Ferrari Balzan, the black and silver Lamborghini of Alvaro Barber, and then the black and orange Ferrari of Raffaele Giammaria. They are going to be arguably the cars to watch as the fifth race of the International GTOpen season about to get underway as they rumble through Woodcote now. And as they come through the right-hander, it will be eyes to the gantry, waiting for the signal to change. Then we'll be going racing at Silverstone. The red lights are on. Out they go, and the race gets underway as Alvaro Prent sprints into the early advantage through Copse Corner. It's Balzan second, Barber third, Giammaria is fourth from Matthias Russo, Sean Balfe, and passing Thoras. In fact, Thoras moves clear of Balfe as Barber looks to pressurise Balzan. So they arrive into Beckett's for the first time, jinking through this high-speed section, which will then propel them on to pretty much the longest straight in British motorsport, the Hangar Straight. There is James Abbott. He's making good progress early on. The bright yellow Radical in pursuit of Sean Balfe as they head towards the conclusion of the first sector. Prent trying to break clear of Balzan as Gia Maria defends from Matthias Russo. Turner's got past Thoras, tucked up behind him. So for Alvaro Prent, the key is going to be to try and get that Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren as far clear as he can in the early stages. For Thoras and Balfe, it's all about staying in touch. There is Mads Rasmussen. He has got Miguel Sardina just behind him in the sporty new Mercedes, and then Claudio Sadanovic in touch with that group. As Prent leads out of farm on the brakes into Village. Already easing away from Balzan, Barber and Gia Maria. We've got Russo, Thoras and Balfe busy doing battle. There is Sean Balfe, who always has a large contingent of friends and family tuning into the International GTOpen races to cheer Sean on. He's in the thick of the action early on as he looks to stay in touch with Thoras, whilst at the same time easing away. Suggest a little bit from James Abbott as they head down the Wellington Straight, get on the brakes for the left-hander at Brooklands, and then around the never-ending right of Luffield that will conclude the first lap of this 70-minute timed race. As they sprint through Woodcote Corner. Matthias Russo trying to shake off, passing Thoras. Heading in towards Cops Corner. It's been an excellent first lap for Alvaro Prent. He leads the way already, 1.3 seconds clear of Alessandro Balzan. There you can see the gap for yourself as they arrive into Magnussen Beckett's. But Prent needs this buffer because he has got an additional 15 seconds in the pits over the Villorba-Course Ferrari of Alessandro Balzan. And this is the beauty of the International GTOpen, if you've never seen it before, is that the strategies unfold through the race, and the gap that may seem quite sizable early on can close up very dramatically as the race unfolds. Meanwhile, Sean Balfe closing up onto the tail of passing Thoras, the pair of them turning through Stowe. Balfe, the 2004 Spanish GT champion, passing Thoras 7th in last year's British GT championship, and very impressive on the couple of occasions that we saw him in the International GTOpen. Thoras from Thailand making the step up to a full international campaign for 2015 alongside Michele Rugolo. There is the AERT Lamborghini of Alvaro Barber, and Barber going strongly early on, just easing away from Raffaele Gia Maria, staying in touch with Alessandro Balzan. Got the gap from Gia Maria back to Russo, who's being helped a little bit then by Thoras being forced into defensive mode by the progress of Sean Balfe. They accelerate out of the loop and then through Aintree onto the Wellington Straight. This is the section of the Silverstone circuit that was changed a few years ago, I think ahead of the 2011 season, just to extend the circuit length, make sure it was fully compliant with modern Grand Prix standards, and has given us some excellent racing. It's a layout the drivers thoroughly enjoy, with a variety of high-speed turns and then also some of the heavier braking zones and overtaking opportunities. So through Woodcote Corner, Balfe in pursuit of Thoras, turning through Copse Corner. And then we've got this battle shaping up for 8th place between James Abbott. He's got Mads Rasmussen behind him as Rasmussen looks to the inside at Copse Corner. Silverstone, though, is a circuit that James Abbott knows very well from his time in the British Formula Ford Championship, but also racing Radical cars in the various Radical Championships. It's great to see James and the Radical out in the International GTOpen this weekend and showing competitively, particularly as Mads Rasmussen behind him, experienced racer from the likes of the LMS. So we're on lap 3 of the race as turning through Stowe. It's the battle between Thoras and Balfe. That is for 6th and 7th position, but watch for those cars flying up the order in the second half of the race, because passing Thoras has got Michele Rugolo waiting for him in the pit box. For Sean Balfe, it is the very, very impressive Phil Keane. head past the Formula One pit lane here at Silverstone on towards the rapid right-hander Abbey, and the Thoris just beginning to ask of the aerodynamic downforce on his AF course Ferrari. He's clearly feeling a little bit flustered with Sean Balfe behind him. You can see maybe pushing a little bit harder than he perhaps want to in these early stages passing the Thoris. They all run, of course, on a control compound Michelin tyre. There's a slight correction from Balfe coming out of the loop. Meanwhile, here is a look at Prent at work. Lovely shot into the cockpit there. And that is pure driving technique for Alvaro Prent. Just a single turn of the wheel to the left and then the right. His heart will be hammering, but he's making it look so smooth, so straightforward as Claudio Sadanovic accelerates along the Wellington Straight. He's in pursuit of Miguel Sardina in their battle for 10th and 11th position. That's not been such a good lap for Sadanovic. I'm just wondering if Claudio's possibly had a little bit of a moment somewhere. He was quite slow through the middle sector. Meanwhile, the fight for third is coming together because Alvaro Barber, having eased away from Raffaele Giammaria a couple of laps ago, is now being harried once more by the AF course Ferrari. Great to see Raffaele Giammaria back in the International GTOpen. He raced with considerable success a couple of seasons ago, was a regular race winner, and has moved across the AF course Ferrari team. Is partnering the very impressive young Argentinian driver Ezequiel Perez Compenac. The pair of them still very emphatically in the title fight 4 races into the year. So Giammaria gets on the brakes down through the gears, turning through Vale, and then the never-ending right-hander at Club. And he's now right onto terms with Alvaro Barber, and Barber may well lose third place here. He defends the inside line as they head on towards Abbey as Giammaria suddenly turns up the heat. But he can't force the move at Abbey, likewise through Farm. That takes something pretty spectacular, but he might be able to squeeze past the Lamborghini on the brakes into Village. Alvaro Barber thought the same thing, and therefore moved across to just cover the inside of the road. Again through the loop, Giammaria can't quite prise the door open. Listening to the Lamborghini singing, absolutely wonderful sound as Giammaria flashes his headlights at Alvaro Barber. Barber, though, of course, far too experienced to fall for that sort of thing, the 2010 International GTOpen champion. Picks up the throttle in the Lamborghini out of Luffield and then through Woodcote. This is the end of lap 4, and this fight for third place is just beginning to allow Balzan and Prent to ease away. Alvaro Prent's advantage over Alessandro Balzan fractionally under 3 seconds, and then Balzan's advantage over Barber fractionally over 3 seconds. But of course, what could well happen here if Barber and Giammaria start fighting between themselves is it brings Matthias Russo, the Argentinian driver in the Baporo Ferrari, into the mix. There is Russo in 5th, lurking with intent. Let's head on to the hangar straight. Matthias Russo last time around was second faster than Alvaro Barber, so beginning to close that gap down fairly rapidly as Barber just wiggles on the brakes into stone. Again through the first sector, Matthias Russo 0.3 of a second quicker than the cars that he's chasing down. His deficit at the start of the lap was 1.5 seconds. It would appear to be a lot less than that now as they turn through Vale. Giammaria just seesaws at the wheel, getting the car hooked up for the right-hand element at Club, and nonetheless runs wide as a result. On towards Abbey, the Ferrari beautifully grounded, but then the Lamborghini, it's such an aggressive-looking car. Holds that advantage. There you can see the rate of capture from Matthias Russo and Raffaele Giammaria. We're coming to the conclusion of the second sector on the lap momentarily. And that will give us a sense of just how much more ground Russo has made, closing up on the fight for third place over the course of this 5th lap of the race. And in fact, Russo has lost ground compared to the cars in front. Maybe that was a little bit of a moment. Maybe it was just the fact Alvaro Barber's pace has been somewhat spurred on. So around Luffield, the leading group of cars. We've got also the team manager for Raffaele Giammaria. Timing screen tells us summoned to race control. and we saw him taking a pretty significant liberty with track limits. Moments ago at club. Now here is what I was referring to. Yes, you can just see in the cockpit a little bit of seesawing at the wheel from Gianmaria. Slight correction maybe as he ran over the curb. So we're just over 10 minutes in here at Silverstone. It is Alvaro Parent who leads the way. He is almost 3 seconds clear of Alessandro Balzan. In third place is Alvaro Barber. Fourth, Raffaele Gianmaria. Fifth, Matthias Russo. Sixth is Passim Lathora. Seventh, Sean Balfe. Eighth, Mads Rasmussen. Ninth is James Abbott. And in 10th, we have got Miguel Sardina. So there is Matthias Russo. He's raced with great success in Europe in various sports and GT cars, but has developed a very successful career as well in Argentina in the hugely popular TC 2000 series there. As again, Gianmaria closes back onto the tail of Alvaro Barber. Barber didn't quite hit the apex, did he, through Vale? And that suddenly brings Gianmaria back into the game as Raffaele Gianmaria looks to close up onto the tail of the Lamborghini Gallardo of Alvaro Barber. But Barber, ultra committed through Abbey and Farm, opens up the gap. And you could just get a sense there as Barber came through Farm. He was right on that limit of adhesion just before the aerodynamic grip cried enough. Beautifully judged performance this so far from Alvaro Barber. And of course, when we hit the pit window in 16 minutes time or so, when we've got 42 minutes left on the clock, he has got no additional time in the pit. So if the ART team can get the car serviced within 70 seconds, then Barber could potentially get the jump on some of the cars he's dicing with. Of course, then it would be Anton Neblitsky at the wheel heading into the second half of the race. So through Woodcote we come, and this concludes the 6th lap of the race. Parent still leads and has had a very good lap in relation to Alessandro Balzan. Balzan, though, breaking clear of this fight for third, which hasn't quite become a three-way scrap yet. Matthias Russo only really able to close up when Barber and Gianmaria slow themselves down, but at the same time has been able to ease away from passing the Thoros, and the Thoros in turn has just shaken off Sean Balfe. Well, if you are watching and want to get in touch with us here at the International GTOpen, if you use social media, then Twitter's probably the way to do so. Hashtag GTOpen is the best way to get in touch with us here at the GTOpen, and we'd love to hear from you, your thoughts about how this race is going to be unfolding over the next hour or so, because Parent needs to get that buffer at the front of the field, not least over Alessandro Balzan. But when we head into the second half of the race, well, Alvaro Parent will hand over to Miguel Ramos, and Ramos, very quick performer, a little bit quicker than Nicola Bonucci, who will take over from Alessandro Balzan. So that is going to be a dynamic worth watching for. So it's Parent who leads from Balzan and Barber. Accelerating on his way through Aintree is Matthias Russo. Again, he runs wide out over the white lines, and they've got to be careful here with not taking too many liberties with the track limits. Then through Brooklands into Luffield, Raffaele Gianmaria just trying a slightly different angle of attack, almost trying to turn it into almost two apexes. It's not really having a huge effect at the moment. So another lap about to be reeled off. There is the signal to Alvaro Barber, just to remind him that he is in third position. And this battle now some 5 seconds adrift of Alessandro Balzan. And that potentially will be very comforting for the Vallorba Course Ferrari team. So we continue to stay with the fight for third position at Silverstone, the 5th round of the International GTOpen for 2015. Alvaro Parent remains our race leader from Alessandro Balzan, but then we've got Alvaro Barber, Raffaele Gianmaria and Matthias Russo, all in the hunt for third. They've been able to build out a nice 6 second or so advantage over Passim Thoras in 6th position. much consultation of timing screens is underway. This group of cars all circulating in the mid 2 minute 2 second bracket. That's versus a high 2 minutes 1 second that we're seeing for Alvaro Parent and a low 2 minutes 2 seconds for Alessandro Balzan. And that's been pretty consistent in terms of lap times throughout the course of the race, as Gianmaria just wiggles and squirms on the brakes as he arrives into Village, then flicking through the loop, and Gianmaria is closed right up onto Alvaro Barber. Whether or not Barber had a slight moment, I don't know, but Gianmaria suddenly in a position to apply the pressure as they come down the Wellington Straight. And this is the first time that Raffaele Gianmaria has really looked as if he might be in a position to overhaul the Lamborghini. Alvaro Barber therefore moves across, takes the early apex into Brooklands. Just has to balance the Lamborghini Gallardo on the brakes as they head around Luffield, and then picking up the throttle, coming in towards Woodcote now. There's Alvaro Barber in third, though, still from Gianmaria. But as the pair of them battle, suddenly Matthias Russo joins the fray, and that was a poor lap from Barber, a 2 minutes 3.2, playing a 2 minutes 2.8 for Raffaele Gianmaria, and a 2 minutes 2.5 for Matthias Russo. And we're still 10 minutes or so away from the pit window opening, and therefore they're going to have to sort this out on track amongst themselves as they head through, just wiggling on the curbs a little bit. Here is a look, though, at our second place car. Alessandro Balzan into the Vale, just inch perfect stuff from Balzan again. You can just see it looks so smooth in the cockpit. And that's the advantage that Alessandro has been able to open up over Alvaro Barber. And Barber has had a good first sector relative to that of Raffaele Gianmaria, who is suddenly sliding into the clutches of Matthias Russo. And now we have got the news that the team manager for Alvaro Barber and Matthias Russo have both been summoned to race control. Already Raffaele Gianmaria's team manager is in race control. So either they've got a fantastic selection of snacks they want to offer up to the team managers, or possibly something has been spotted with relation to all three cars' behaviour on track. That means they need a bit of a conversation. The only thing I can think it is possibly track limits throughout the course of the race. Certainly we've seen, I think, and again, all four wheels for all three cars over the white line. And that, I suspect, is what's causing the concern. It's slightly highlighted because this is very close to tussle, and therefore we're spending a lot of time focusing on it. Whether or not other cars in the race are doing the same, we don't know. Certainly these three cars have all caught the attention of race control. Look, the Lamborghini Gallardo perfectly poised as the front splitter bounces to within a millimetre or so of the track surface. Alvaro Barber fixed in concentration. And he's had a good lap here because that was a 2 minutes 2.6 for Alvaro Barber, a 2 minutes 2.9 for Raffaele Gianmaria, and therefore the gap just extends slightly between the pair of them. As Gianmaria looks to get the power down, coming out of Chapel Curve onto the Hangar Straight. Head on towards Stowe Corner. We are almost 20 minutes into the action here at Silverstone, and Alvaro Parent is our race leader, fractionally under 5 seconds clear of Alessandro Balzan. Balzan in turn is 6 seconds ahead of this thoroughly entertaining fight for third place. Really fluctuating fortunes for all three drivers, so they all take turns to have a good lap each and every time around. On this lap so far, it has been Matthias Russo who's flying. Here is Miguel Sardina in the Sport and new Mercedes. He is currently circulating in 10th position. As around the loop once more, we are on lap 10 of the race. We are exactly 20 minutes in here at Silverstone. And here is our race leader, Alvaro Parent, in the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren 650S. We've not talked a lot about Alvaro or indeed the car so far because he has been so emphatic in his performance. The 2005 British Formula 3 champion, the 2007 Formula Renault 3.5 litre champion, before moving across to become a very, very successful GT racer. There is Alessandro Balzan, and you can see each and every lap, Prenk gaining in the region of about half a second on Balzan, who just runs out to the periphery of the road at Copse Corner, steadies it through Maggots and Beckett's, and Balzan, if you follow him on Twitter at all, has basically spent most of the past 24 hours just saying how much he enjoys the Silverstone circuit. And that's really showing so far, as he is in pursuit of his second victory of the season, having won the very first race of the year in Paul Ricard. Meanwhile, Matthias Russo has a super run on Gianmaria, heading down the hanger straight, and Russo thinks about pouncing, forces Gianmaria to take the defensive line into Stowe Corner. It suddenly gives Alvaro Barber the opportunity to think about making a bid for freedom at the front of the field, but Russo can't convert the move as they turn through Vale and Club. Although the corners have been slightly reprofiled, it's largely unchanged from when this section of track was introduced back in 1991. So the first attempt to slow down the ultra-fast Silverstone layout of yesteryear. And then we've got this much newer section of circuit through Village, Loop and Aintree, as suddenly Alvaro Bauer, having broken free, is now being chased back down again by Raffaele Gianmaria. It really is a battle of fluctuating fortunes. We're only 5 minutes or so away from the pit window opening. I suspect all three of these cars would be inclined to stay out a little bit deeper into the pit window, which is open until there are 28 minutes left on the race clock. So they've got about 14 minutes, which is the equivalent of 6 or 7 laps, to decide what they want to do with regards to pit strategy. Meanwhile, I think we could expect to see Passim Nathoras and Sean Balfe coming in very, very early at the start of the pit window. So again, Gianmaria slipping back towards Matthias Russo. So look at Gianmaria in flight, and he just doesn't seem to have that AF Course Ferrari set up quite as he wants to, because in all the other super slow motions we've seen minimal corrections, with the exception of Gianmaria, who's potentially just chasing a little bit of understeer as he now comes on the hanger straight, and once more Matthias Russo in a position to challenge. You can barely see the Vapouro Ferrari now. Russo begins to move out of the toe into Stowe Corner, the two Ferraris side by side. Gianmaria holds on to fourth. He claims the apex, but still there's that heavy braking zone at the Vale to come. And again, Gianmaria just moves slightly towards the inside of the circuit, making sure there's no way past Matthias Russo. As the pair of them then accelerate through out of Club. Meanwhile, here is a replay of James Abbott just pushing a little bit too hard in 9th position. He's got a reasonable buffer over Miguel Sardina, so that shouldn't cost him too much. He's on the brakes into Village once more. Gianmaria and Russo. And Alvaro Barber, where is he? Yes, the Lamborghini, just that little bit further clear now, as Gianmaria has possibly got through the sweet spot on his Michelin tyres, because he is visibly struggling with understeer or accelerating out of some of the slower turns. It happens through the Vale, and it's happening again out of the loop, and that means that Matthias Russo is potentially going to be able to make a bit of progress. Still got the team manager for the ART Lamborghini of Alvaro Barber, who needs to present themselves at race control. As yet, though, we haven't had any notification penalties. Here is Sean Balfe. Balfe currently in 7th position, but watch how that car goes in the second half of the race once we see Phil Keane behind the wheel. That is going to be something to really look forward to. So we are just 3 minutes away from the pit window opening, which means in a couple of laps, I suspect we'll see Balfe in, we'll see Nathoras in. down the Hangar Straight. This time around, Matthias Russo not quite close enough to Gia Maria. The camera angle foreshortens it a little bit, but Russo, although he comes for a little bit of a look, he's not close enough to challenge. So the two Ferraris separated by about 3 car lengths as they exit Stowe Corner. Well, there's always that story about Ayrton Senna and Stowe Corner back in his Lotus days, that Senna was determined that he could take Stowe Corner flat, went out in the test day, took it flat, spun it, went back to the team, said, I had a spin, but I think it was me, tried again at Stowe, spun it once more, and only at that point did Senna decide that the Stowe Corner couldn't be taken flat out. That was when the corner was a little bit more open in its exit. Certainly not a flat turn now, but it's still very high-speed approach. So we're on lap 13. Alvaro Prenc remains our race leader from Balzan. 6.2 seconds is that gap. Then Alvaro Barber further 6 seconds back, and he is now a couple of seconds clear of the Gia Maria and Russo fight. Gia Maria has had a pretty solid tour of the circuit on this occasion. He's just been able to shake off Matthias Russo for the moment. Now, what has Russo got left in the tank in terms of coming back at Raffaele Gia Maria? The pair of them heading out of Luffield into Woodcote. And then into Copse Corner. Always a formidable challenge, Copse. You brake very late, and you can't see the exit of the corner until you're midway through it. Well, this is a really strong showing as well from the AERT Lamborghini of Alvaro Barber. The car has been steadily getting more and more competitive as the season has unfolded, and barring a disaster, you would suspect that Barber and Neblitsky are good candidates to be on the podium this afternoon, as they're shortly going to be in amongst the traffic. The first car they'll be catching is Rafael Unzarazaga. There is Miguel Ramos, who is poised and ready to take over from our race leader, Alvaro Prenc. But I would be very surprised if Alvaro didn't stay out until pretty deep into the driver change window, although he is getting into a little bit of the traffic. That's Claudio Sudanovic, who is just up ahead of him on the road. The McLaren, beautifully poised, immaculately turned out car, and the highest standards of preparation from the Teo Martin Motorsport team. Yet to win, of course, this season. Today might be their day, but when the pit stops have shaken themselves out because of the time handicaps, it means that actually Nicola Benucci will emerge from the pits with a 9-second advantage over Miguel Ramos. So although Prenc leads and has led since the start of the race, in terms of the strategy, it's still in favour of the Vallorba course Ferrari at the moment. So the driver change window is now open here at Silverstone. This is when the race would potentially begin to get turned on its head. Are we going to see anybody heading into the pits on this occasion? Yes, Claudio Sudanovic has ducked into the pit lane. That will be to hand over to Ilya Melnikov. Sudanovic not having one of his better days, unfortunately. German driver absolutely adores his racing. Just from what we've seen, he didn't seem to have the car to his liking. As Prenc heads in to lap 15. Leading the way now, 6.5 seconds from Alessandro Balzan. Meanwhile, not sure Rafael Unzarazaga saw that he was being lapped and then rejoining in the path of Raffaele Gia Maria. Fortunately, all without anything more than slightly elevated blood pressure. As we suspected, here is Michele Rugolo taking over from passing Lathoris. Now this is when this car could potentially start flying. Rugolo has been one of the star performers in the International GTOpen for the past few years, but alongside Lathoris, it's a genuine title contending car. It's got a fair amount of work to do because at the point at which Lathoris ducked into the pits, the car was the best part of 25 seconds off the lead of the race, and they have got additional 15 seconds in the pits as well because of their success in preceding races. So it's a pretty stern exam question for Michele Rugolo. For Alessandro Balzan, however, because the Vallorba course Ferrari retired in Estoril, they've just got that minimum 70 seconds in the pits, and Balzan, I suspect, will go for another 10 minutes or so before handing over to Nicola Bonucci. Bonucci, who has been getting quicker and quicker with each and every race so far this season, could be in a position to really challenge for the win. Meanwhile, James Abbott is going to hand over to the Swiss driver Shahin Nouri. Nouri, who is one of the less experienced drivers in the field, but very impressive, having come into racing immediately moving to the front of radical European and UK championships. Could be one to watch for. There is Ilya Melnikov, out on track in the wheel of the Ferrari 458. Melnikov, who finished 9th in last year's Porsche Carrera Cup in Italy, has also raced in ELMS competition. So James Abbott out of the car. Also, the change is underway as Manuel da Costa takes over in the Sport Anew. Mercedes, right, here is the race leader, Alvaro Parent, and Parent has had another very solid lap. He is the only driver who has really dipped beneath the 2-minute 2-second bracket on a consistent basis. As we return to the fight for third, it remains equally frenetic, and you can see Matthias Russo beginning to run out of patience, particularly as Raffaele Gianmaria is now back onto terms with Alvaro Barber, another attempt to climb up into third position. And this is as close as these three cars have really been at any point in proceedings. And Gianmaria, we know that when he needs to take the gloves off and get scrapping, he can. Meanwhile, here is the change for the Balfe Motorsport Ferrari. Phil Keane takes over from Sean Balfe, and that should be a treat to see Phil in full flight. And that car pitching in just behind the, of course, Ferrari of Michele Rugolo, but with only 5 seconds of pit handicap time, as Gianmaria starts to apply the pressure to Alvaro Barber at the loop. And that's the one weakness of the Lamborghini Gallardo, is its traction accelerating out of slow corners. Again, the three of them heading down the Wellington Straight. Gianmaria moves to the inside, partly to challenge Barber, partly also to make sure that Matthias Russo doesn't look to poach fourth place from him. The corner marker at Brooklands becomes a casualty as Barber sends it flying. And Alvaro Barber elects that enough is enough. He ducks into the pit lane in the AART Lamborghini. That will be to hand over to another ex-Formula Renault 3.5 litre racer in the form of Anton Neblitsky. It now releases the two Ferraris of Gianmaria and Russo to show their pace. And again, both of these cars have got additional pit handicap time as a result of their success in preceding races, whereas Barber and Neblitsky don't. So once this has all worked through, Anton Neblitsky should be fed out with about 10 to 12 seconds worth of advantage over the two cars that Alvaro Barber was battling with. So a new set of Michelins go on the Lamborghini as Matthias Russo again turns up the heat on the barbecue flamed livery car of Raffaele Gianmaria. Gianmaria picks up the throttle coming out of Stowe, accelerating on to the braking zone at Vale. Russo showing himself large in Gianmaria's mirrors. That gap down by 1/10 of a second last time through, as we are just a minute away from half race distance. Alvaro Parent remains our race leader as he has done throughout. His advantage over Alessandro Balzan steadily growing. Then this fight for third place now some 10 seconds back from Balzan. When the strategies begin to unfold, this will be absolutely fascinating, because we've got Phil Keane and Michele Rugolo. They have taken over their cars early and will be flying. We've got Anton Neblitsky, who's still getting to grips with GT racing, but he's a quick driver and will potentially be played out in a very nice position. The same going for Nicola Bonucci, at the point at which Alessandro Balzan peels into the pits. As now at exactly half race distance, Alvaro Parent, our race leader, is in to hand over to Miguel Ramos. Will this be a maiden victory for the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren? Parent gets out, Ramos gets in. New tyres all around for the McLaren. Ramos gets strapped in by Parent as flashing through Copse Corner, then moving up the order effectively to promote this fight to second And third place now for Gianmaria and Russo by dint of that pit stop. Now, one of the key questions is going to be actually where Ramos feeds out in relation to Anton Neblitsky. As down the hanger straight, Gianmaria and Balzan accelerate, or rather Gianmaria and Russo accelerate, and that last time around was, now that they were released from following the Lamborghini, they've both posted their personal best laps of the race so far into the low 2-minute 2-second bracket, 2 minutes 2.3 apiece. But the bad news is that compares to Michele Rugolo on his outlap of a 2 minutes 1.760. So this is the stage of the race where they're all racing cars they can't really see, but even though both Gianmaria and Russo have upped their pace, they're still a little bit slower, possibly, than the cars that are going to be coming into play as we head towards the checkered flag. Here comes Miguel Ramos emerging from the pit lane. And we'll see where he is in relation to some of the others that have pitted momentarily. Also, driver change underway as Felipe Barrieros takes over from Mads Rasmussen. It was a very solid stint, though, from Rasmussen, and he drove that car well up the order. And Barrieros, as we saw in Estoril, should not be discounted. He's a quick driver, also one who is always keen to get into the thick of a scrap. So that car, which is currently leading the GTOpen competition for the gentleman drivers, is right up there in the overall order as well. So another lap reeled off. We're into lap 19 of the race. Alessandro Balzan leads from Raffaele Gianmaria and Matthias Russo. Those are the only three cars in the race yet to have made their pit stops. They have got time, if they want it, for this lap and probably one more before they peel into the pits. So that is the point at which it's going to start to get absolutely fascinating. Those that have pitted, now this is pertinent, Phil Keane has emerged ahead of Michele Rugolo and is 3.5 seconds clear of Rugolo, but Rugolo is absolutely flying and has just set the fastest lap of the race with a 2 minutes 1.424. There is Ezequiel Perez Companac waiting for Raffaele Gianmaria to peel into the pits. So the three cars that haven't pitched in are currently circulating a little bit slower than some of those that have made their pit stops. Also a little bit of a glimpse of Emiliano Lopez. He will be taking over from Matthias Russo. Lopez and Russo, of course, victorious in race 2 in Estoril. Very emotional win for both of them. They were helped a little bit by a well-timed safety car, at least from their perspective, which closed some of the gaps down, but nonetheless, then very much did the business on track to make sure they were unable to re-establish a buffer. Wasn't to be headed. So are we going to see any of the leading trio into the pits on this occasion? I'd imagine that Balzan is probably going to go on for one more lap. So the pit window, just to remind you, closes when we've got 28 minutes left on the clock, so they do have time, if they want it, for another lap. Certainly Gianmaria showing no signs to head to the pits, but in now comes Matthias Russo. So Russo is in to hand over to Emiliano Lopez. Alessandro Balzan and Raffaele Gianmaria continue on their way. So the Vapouro Ferrari rolls along pit lane confirmation. As you can see that they have got an additional 15 seconds that they earned in Estoril by winning second race. So to a halt, Matthias Russo almost out of the car before it comes to a stop. Jumping in is Emiliano Lopez. And the team get to work. In terms of those that have pitted in, here is Miguel Ramos. This is going to be his first flying lap post-pit stop. And Ramos has emerged ahead of Anton Neblitsky, and he's 16 seconds clear of Anton Neblitsky. We'll just confirm the amended differential at the end of this lap. But then Phil Keane and Michele Rugolo are absolutely on it. Phil Keane's just done a 2 minutes 1.3. Rugolo a 2 minutes 1.2. Another fastest lap of the race for Michele Rugolo. And at this rate of capture, they might be on terms with Ramos. So here comes Miguel now. He accelerates through Woodcote. This is his first flying lap. What does he offer us? A 2 minutes 4.5. Well, he needs a little bit more than that, I would suggest, over the next half an hour to score a first victory for the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren. But of course, it all depends on the pace of Nicola Bonucci after the pit stops as well. And Ramos' advantage over Neblitsky, 15.2 seconds, but Neblitsky is being caught hand over fist by Phil Keane. And there is Phil Keane, who has jumped Emiliano Lopez through the pit stops. So now the race comes alive, because we have got the ART Lamborghini of Neblitsky being caught by Phil Keane. Then we've got Lopez and Rugolo. So these cars all suddenly coming together. We are in for a bit of a thriller. They have got Manuel da Costa just ahead of them in the Sport and U Mercedes. Well, Phil Keane is arguably the man to watch, as now into the pit lane comes Raffaele Giammaria. Ezequiel Perez-Compagnac takes over. Also in is Alessandro Balzan. He has handed over to Nicola Bonucci. So the battle we were just watching is essentially racing these two static cars in the pits. And once they emerge at the end of that next lap, we will get a true sense of the order and the gaps that need to close down. So here is the Valour Course Ferrari. Bonucci hops in, and here comes Miguel Ramos. So Ramos is at worst going to be third, because he is clear of Emiliano Lopez, who gets passed by Michele Rugolo. So that is a pass for position. Rugolo to the inside of Emiliano Lopez as he chases Phil Keane and Anton Neblitsky. Lopez looks to fight back, sliding the Baporo Ferrari. But what we have seen consistently this year is the Michelin tires, they take about a lap or two to get the heat into them. And don't be deceived by your picture. It's lovely and sunny at Silverstone today. It is not hot. It is really quite breezy, as now Phil Keane right in pursuit of the Lamborghini as they went through Luffield. Here we go. They're all in pursuit of Manuel da Costa as they head towards Copse Corner. We've got cars due to emerge from the pits at any instant as well. So here comes Ezequiel Perez-Compagnac. So he is ahead of the group behind. Now, where is he in relation to Miguel Ramos, as Manuel da Costa sensibly moves away from this battle between Neblitsky and Phil Keane. Now, how quickly, if at all, can Phil Keane find a way past the Lamborghini Gallardo of Anton Neblitsky? Neblitsky was bouncing off the suspension as he comes out of Chapel Curve onto the hangar straight. So at the end of this lap, we will be able to give you the race order and the gaps that need to close over the concluding 25 minutes it will be by the time they get to the start and finish line. Is Keane going to be close enough to challenge Neblitsky? To Vale, not quite. But Phil Keane, fourth in last year's British GT Championship. Just looking to apply the pressure. So Neblitsky may be trying to force that momentary mistake from the Russian. That will be enough to allow him to pounce. In the background, you can see Michele Rugolo in full flight, looking to close in onto this scrap as quickly as possible. So here is Nicola Bonucci turning through Brooklands, and it is the Valour Course Ferrari that I believe has been able, by dint of not having that additional pit handicap time, that has jumped into the lead of the race. So Bonucci about to come across the line. That would be 21 laps concluded. And so it is Bonucci who leads. Who's going to come through in second place? We're watching the fight for fourth position, indisputably so. It just depends whether or not it's Ramos. It should be Ramos who's next through. It is. So Miguel Ramos is in second place. This is the fight then for third, fourth and fifth, because Ezequiel Perez-Compagnac being caught by Anton Neblitsky, Phil Keane and Michele Rugolo. So over the line they all come. 21 laps complete. Nicola Bonucci is your race leader. He is 13 seconds clear of Miguel Ramos. In third place, it's Ezequiel Perez-Compagnac. Fourth is Anton Neblitsky. Fifth is Phil Keane. Sixth is Michele Rugolo. And seventh is Emiliano Lopez. But I suspect that is going to change any second now, because Ezekiel Perez-Companac has been comprehensively caught by Neblitsky and Keane as they accelerate through Chapel Curve and on to the Hangar Straight. Through Stowe they come, no change in the order, but it all closes up. We've got 4 cars jostling for 3rd position, and once they are able to get a little bit of clear air in the shape of Rugolo and Keane, I suspect they could possibly close in on the cars in front of them as well. We have got just 24 minutes and change left on the clock here, the 5th race of the GTOpen season, coming to you from a sunny, if blustery Silverstone. Now Anton Neblitsky looks to line up the move, and Ezekiel Perez-Companac into Village, thinks better of it, brakes a little bit more deeply than he would have wanted to. That might give Phil Keane the opportunity to ask a couple of questions of the Lamborghini driver, and also Michele Rugolo, the chance to potentially sneak a couple of places as well. The cars thunder down the Wellington Straight. The Lamborghini and Ferrari engines sing as they sprint towards Brooklands, and Keane pressurised by Rugolo. This is what you want to see, supercars doing battle wheel to wheel. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, Nicola Bonucci did a 2 minutes 5.1 versus a 2 minutes 3.7 for Miguel Ramos. So that gap has come down substantially. Now, what sort of pace are we seeing from this group of cars behind Ezekiel Perez-Companac? It's a 2 minutes 5 for all of them, and it's going to give Bonucci and Ramos the freedom possibly to fight for the win between themselves, because this fight is 16 seconds back, which is chase downable just about for Rugolo and Keane if they can get ahead of the cars in front of them. As now Phil Keane thinks about applying the pressure through Beckett. And again, Neblitsky just on the suspension stopper. Out of Chapel Curve onto the Hangar Straight. So once more we head in towards Stowe Corner, and the challenge is for position. Well, the race has truly come alive here at Silverstone as Phil Keane closes up onto Anton Neblitsky, and Rugolo tries to go around the outside of the pair of them. He's passed Keane into club, and that was Phil Keane. Just frustration getting the better of him as Neblitsky stuck to his ground. It is Nicola Bonucci who leads. He is just shy of 11 seconds clear of Miguel Ramos, and this is the fight for 3rd place, currently headed by Ezekiel Perez-Companac. Then it is the ART Lamborghini of Anton Neblitsky, the AF Course Ferrari of Michele Rugolo, and the Balth Motorsport Ferrari in the hands of Phil Keane. We have still got plenty of time left on the clock here in Silverstone, and therefore everything could change. Here's another look at it then. Neblitsky defending from Keane, who committed to the inside line at Vale, was blocked out by Neblitsky. It left a gaping hole for Michele Rugolo that the Italian driver was only too happy to fill. Look at it from the other angle. Again, great close and clean driving. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, now this is interesting, Miguel Ramos was exactly a second quicker than Nicola Bonucci last time around. The gap between the pair of them is 10 seconds, but there's time for 10 laps in this race, and therefore we could be in for a grandstand finale. Meanwhile, Rugolo and Keane still thwarted by the performance of the Lamborghini Gallardo. And now that Ezekiel Perez-Companac has got into his stride, he's just beginning to ease away from Neblitsky as well. As Phil Keane gets right underneath the rear spoiler of Michele Rugolo. Here is a quick look at our race leader, Nicola Bonucci, at work at the head of the field in pursuit of his 2nd victory of the campaign, the Vallorba Course team, who've had so much success in recent years in the International GTOpen. Out of Stowe Corner, and Neblitsky not under immediate pressure from Rugolo, and the strategy of trying to force an error from the Russian clearly isn't working just at the moment, because Neblitsky doing a very fine job of sticking to the racing line, and the pace of this battle is such that it's allowing the leading duo of Bonucci and Ramos to break clear. And I think really, unless Michele Rugolo and Phil Keane can find a way past Niblitsky in the next lap or so, then this is going to be pretty much settled as the fight for third. But that was the first time the Lamborghini driver just missed his braking point into Village. It takes Rugolo to look to the outside at the loop. Phil Keane potentially seeing a gap to the inside, thinks better of it. For the moment, possibly content just to allow Michele Rugolo to apply the pressure to Anton Neblitsky, see if he can create a hole that is big enough for the two Ferraris to sneak past. Rugolo looks to the inside at Brooklands. Phil Keane also goes to cover the inside line. The pace of this battle is now about a second a lap slower than that of Ezekiel Perez-Compagnac as a gap almost opened up at Luffield. And Anton Neblitsky very quick to close it. Brilliant racing as now Phil Keane comes back onto terms with Michele Rugolo. The fight for third, fourth, fifth and sixth flashes through into the 25th lap of the race. At the front of the field, Miguel Ramos again substantially quicker than Nicola Bonucci on that 24th tour. Tune of about 7/10 of a second. It's not quite the rate of capture that Ramos needs to be assured of the victory. As Phil Keane makes a big mistake through Beckett's. You could see the car was starting to wash out. He gathers it up. Has just momentarily lost contact with Michele Rugolo, but I suspect that he will be able to close that gap down in fairly short order, given the pace that we've been seeing from Keane and Rugolo versus the two cars in front of them when they were in clear air. That shows the challenges of overtaking, which is that the two Ferraris at the back of the queue a couple of seconds a lap quicker than the cars in front of them, but getting that couple of seconds a lap to play into something that they can really take advantage of, proving to be very tricky. So 18 minutes remain at Silverstone. Still, we focus, as we have done really throughout the entirety of the race, on the fight for third, because it might have slightly different cast list in the second half of the race. It is still an intriguing battle as again Neblitsky just hugs the inside line at the loop. He's going to make this as difficult as possible for Michele Rugolo, and why not? Because this would be Neblitsky's best result of the year. So they rocket down the Wellington Straight again. As Neblitsky driving increasingly defensively, though, he's just beginning to consistently compromise his line into some of the slower corners, but that doesn't really matter, because as long as he gets the exit speed as he wants from Luffield, from Copse, from Stowe, and from the loop as well, it makes life incredibly hard for Rugolo and Keane behind. You can see that Ezekiel Perez-Compagnac just easing clear. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, it's a very to and fro battle, just to update you, because last time around Nicola Bonucci did a 2 minutes 4.7 versus a 2 minutes 3.1 from Miguel Ramos. So that gap is down to just 8.2 seconds. And here is Ramos really pushing. And there is just the possibility that Ramos may catch Bonucci between now and the checkered flag. Because Ramos lapping consistently now in the low 2 minute 3 second bracket. Bonucci's lap times beginning to wobble all over the place. Michele Rugolo getting thoroughly sick of the sight of the tail end of the Lamborghini Gallardo of Anton Neblitsky. At the same time, Rugolo's not yet been able to fashion any sort of real challenge to the Lamborghini, which slithers out wide once more, accelerating onward towards Abbey. And Ezekiel Perez-Compagnac, despite all this, he's built a little bit of a buffer, but you'd hardly describe it as running away from the battle for fourth position. As into the loop, and again Rugolo looking for that outside line, trying to then get the switch back to the inside, but the Lamborghini has got such excellent acceleration. The Ferrari might be a little bit quicker at the end of the straight and a little bit more balanced through the quick corners, and certainly under braking. When it comes to exit speed, the Gallardo very impressive, and Anton Neblitsky doing exactly what he needs to do to drive to that car's strengths. Rugolo now getting frustrated, just kicking up the dirt through Brooklands. You can see that Michele Rugolo is now having visions of a trip to the podium disappearing. He knows he needs to clear the Lamborghini. He knows he needs to do it as quickly as possible. And he's looking at every single opportunity now. Still got time open to him. At the front of the field, though, we have got the gap closing down ever more. 2 minutes 4.5 for Bonucci, 2 minutes 2.8 for Miguel Ramos. So it's 6.6 seconds between the race leaders. So that chase well and truly alive. 14.5 minutes remain as Phil Keane shows himself to Michele Rugolo. Rugolo right up behind the Lamborghini again. And Anton Neblitsky doing a really fine job of driving to the Gallardo strengths. Now Rugolo suddenly forced into defensive mode from Phil Keane, who has decided that Rugolo has had several laps to try and challenge the Lamborghini. It's possibly his turn to see if he can prize himself past. So the order for you, it is Bonucci who leads, 6.6 seconds clear of Miguel Ramos. In third place, it's Ezequiel Perez-Companac. Fourth is the Lamborghini Gallardo of Anton Neblitsky. Fifth is Michele Rugolo. Sixth is Phil Keane, who's just had a little bit of a trip off-road at the back of your picture. Seventh is Emiliano Lopez. Eighth, Felipe Barrieroth. Ninth, Ilya Melnikov. And in 10th place, Manuel da Costa. And it is Barrieroth who is our leader, I should add, in the Gentleman Drivers GTAM trophy. So across the line there is Bonucci, who does a 2 minutes 4.0. It's a 2 minutes 3.1 from Ramos. 5.7 seconds the gap between the pair of them, and now the chase is well and truly on. So we've really got two battles to intrigue us. We've got this fight for fourth place, which is now really a two-hander. Phil Keane has dropped quite some way back after that off-track excursion. So now Neblitsky and Rugolo, they're also moving adrift of Ezequiel Perez-Companac. So all of that is beginning to just open itself up a little bit. Out of Beckett's and Chapel Curve onto the Hangar Straight. This is the 28th lap of the race. Anton Neblitsky making the transition to GT racing. He's been learning it each and every time he's got behind the wheel, and now it really is beginning to come together for the Russian driver, because this is a fine performance under sustained pressure from Michele Rugolo, but he has withstood everything so far that Rugolo could throw at him. As at the front of the field, Nicola Bonucci leads 5.7 seconds, his advantage over Miguel Ramos. Ezequiel Perez-Companac holds on to third. Well, Michele Rugolo digging deep into his bag of tricks, but at the moment, very little he can do about Anton Neblitsky ahead of him as they accelerate their way onto the Wenton Straight. Now Rugolo gets a good run. Maybe the camera angle shortens it a little bit, but you could see how hard Rugolo was trying. He's right up, and he goes to the move. He launches to the inside, but Neblitsky covers the move just in time. Really fine defensive driving from Anton Neblitsky, and that was an attempt that was several laps in the making from Michele Rugolo, and it didn't quite pay off for him. So the pair of them propelling around Woodcote Corner once more. I suspect it is going to be the fight for fourth, and only fourth, because Ezequiel Perez-Companac has upped his pace somewhat. He's now almost 3 seconds clear. Here is another look at it. Down the Wellington Straight. Rugolo leaves it to the last minute, but he couldn't draw alongside Neblitsky before Neblitsky moved across and covered the line. I should also say that we have got just now 4.6 seconds between Nicola Bonucci ahead of the field and Miguel Ramos hunting him down. So very soon we're going to have the battle at the front of the race being joined. And this is the way that it often unfolds with the different strategies as Rugolo closes right onto the tail of Anton Neblitsky through Stowe corner. Neblitsky has to cover very early into the Vale. It means Rugolo goes to the outside and finally makes the move stick around the outside of Anton Neblitsky. He goes and up into 4th position. It has been several laps of frustration for Michele Rugolo, but finally he finds a way around the Lamborghini. So down to 5th position for Anton Neblitsky, passed eventually by Michele Rugolo. Here is our race leader, Nicola Bonucci. As the graphic tells you, it's been pretty grim reading for Bonucci on his pit board for the last few laps because Miguel Ramos has been inexorably closing the gap down. Here is another chance to savour that pass from Michele Rugolo. Very late on the brakes into the Vale. Squeezes out the Lamborghini Gallardo. Now can Rugolo close up onto the tail of Ezequiel Perez-Compagnac. The gap, meanwhile, between Bonucci and Miguel Ramos is down to just 2.7 seconds. Will this be the first victory of the season for the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren? They have got a little bit of lappery in the form of Rafael Unzarazaga to overhaul. Unzarazaga, though, I think should be aware that Ramos is there, but it might just momentarily thwart the progress of the McLaren. Alvaro Prent and the Teo Martin Motorsport team will be much more relieved as they see this picture of the McLaren easing clear of the Radical down the hangar straight. And what has that cost Ramos? In fact, through the first sector, he was 4/10 quicker than Nicola Bonucci, notwithstanding that lappery, which gives you an indication of just how well things are going at the moment for Ramos. But we had this in the first race of the year at Paul Ricard for Bonucci. He was being reeled in incredibly rapidly late on by Alvaro Prem, but it didn't really fluster him in any way, shape or form. And of course, it's the old adage in motorsport. It's quite one thing to catch the car in front. It's another entirely for you to overtake it. Speaking of overtaking, Phil Keane thinking about doing a Michele Rugolo to Anton Neblitsky. Neblitsky in 5th position, though still sticking to his ground. Rugolo, though, having an impressive start lap. He has got the exam question of about 3 seconds on Ezequiel Perez-Compagnac to try and overhaul in 8 minutes or thereabouts. So fights for 1st and 2nd, 3rd and 4th, 5th and 6th, all far from resolved. As Phil Keane discovering just how wide a Lamborghini Gallardo can be when the driver really wants it to. King kicks up the dust again, coming out of the loop along the Wellington Straight. The heat haze shimmers off the supercars as they jump on the brakes down through the gears into the left-hander at Brooklands. Phil Keane closing on to Neblitsky. Neblitsky, does he leave a hole into Luffield? Of course he doesn't. Gets in position nice and early to close the door. They're beginning to run out of laps now. The gap between Bonucci and Ramos, meanwhile, down to just 1.7 seconds. Well, this is what 3/10 of a second looks like as it arrives into Copse Corner. It's about a car's length, potentially even a little bit less than that as they hit the apex. It extends slightly as they head into Beckett's. So we have got 6.5 minutes remaining. Nicola Bonucci leads, 1.7 seconds his advantage over Miguel Ramos. And here it is then, as Bonucci can see the McLaren getting larger with each and every turn in his rear view mirrors. Miguel Ramos has just been steadily closing that gap down. The Villorba Course team will be, I suspect, trying to keep communication to Bonucci to the absolute minimum. That said, this is a long championship season, 14 races. Ramos doesn't want to unduly risk the car doing a do-or-die manoeuvre for the Costa Championship points on Nicola Bonucci. So Bonucci will do what he can to keep it as wide as possible. Through the first sector of the lap, Ramos was 0.4 of a second faster than Bonucci. Through this middle sector, he's been 0.2 of a second faster. So that is already bringing the gap down to 1.1 seconds. As Bonucci takes a very tight inside line for Brooklands. That will have cost him a 10th or 2 in relation to Miguel Ramos. Ramos takes a big bite of curb as he arrives into Luffield, then just begins to extends his right foot onto the throttle as the McLaren sprints through. This is the conclusion of lap 31. 3 laps remain here at Silverstone in the 5th round of the International GTOpen. And it is down to just 0.6 of a second between Miguel Ramos and Nicola Bonucci. Will it be a second win of the season for the Valour course team? Will it be a first win of the year for the Teo Martin Motorsport squad? Well, it's potentially beginning to look like the latter, because now Ramos is right onto the tail of the Ferrari. But can Bonucci get the power down through Chapel Curve onto the hangar straight? Because if he can do that, it will be difficult for the McLaren to power past. And Bonucci knows that Ramos is there. He needs to move across, surely, to cover the inside line. He doesn't do it. Miguel Ramos looks the inside and darts through, takes the lead of the race. Bonucci trying to swoop back around the outside, but he didn't cover the inside line, and that in the end was reasonably straightforward for Miguel Ramos. He takes the advantage and will now hope to just build a couple of seconds worth of a buffer over Bonucci. Well, that is going to be very pleasing for Miguel Ramos. He won 7 races in last year's International GTOpen, but various mechanical maladies eventually saw him finishing 2nd in the standings. He knows about the key of consistency, but he also thoroughly enjoys being on the top step of the rostrum. Here's another look at it. Classic Silverstone manoeuvre out of the slipstream along the hangar straight to the inside at Stowe. And by the time Bonucci looked to try and defend and fight back, the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren was through. Meanwhile, Michele Rugolo has caught Ezequiel Perez-Compagnac. This is the fight for 3rd and 4th position. We thought Rugolo may have had a bit too much of an exam question on his hands, but he has closed down at the rate of 1.5 seconds a lap onto the tail of the sister AF Course Ferrari, and now ducking and weaving is Ezequiel Perez-Compagnac, as Michele Rugolo can see his championship lead disappearing with Ramos and Parent at the head of the field. So every point he can get his hands on will be immensely valuable. The pair of them flash through into the penultimate lap of the race. So Rugolo has got about 6 miles or so to try and find a way past the Argentinian driver, Ezequiel Perez-Compagnac. Perez-Compagnac, last year's Ferrari Challenge Europe champion. Really well adapted to the performance characteristics of the Ferrari 458. They've got Ilya Melnikov as well, who might just be caught and lapped, actually in another of the AF Course Ferraris, between now and the end of the race. That could give the opening to Rugolo, but Perez-Compagnac knows he's coming. You can see Ezequiel Perez-Compagnac right to the inside of the road, giving no space to Rugolo to the inside. Instead, Michele Rugolo thinks about challenging for the outside at Stowe. That won't work. Perez-Compagnac will have as low a corner speed as possible so that Rugolo can't get the power down early enough coming out of Stowe into the Vale. That's exactly what Perez-Compagnac does. Really astute tactical driving in defence from Ezequiel Perez-Compagnac. Focusing on the exit speed, not allowing Rugolo to carry superior corner speed, or he can afford not to. So anxious times for AF Course. As Perez-Compagnac was on the dirt coming through farm. He somehow gets the car stopped for Village, but Rugolo surely is going to go through. Indeed he does. And if you cast your mind back 12 months ago when Andrea Montoni had a massive spin from the same moment coming through farm, Perez-Compagnac, though, demoted by Rugolo. And at the back of the picture, you can see Phil Keane as well has moved clear of Anton Neblitsky, so it's all change on the penultimate lap of the race. As Rugolo and the Thoras en route for another podium as they head through Luffield. Ezequiel Perez-Compagnac looking to fight back. We are into the last lap of the race. And have we had a spin for Anton Neblitsky? He suddenly dropped a long way back from Phil Keane. Here's another look at it. There you see, just kicking up the dust. It unsettles the car, under braking for Village. And Perez-Compagnac runs off the road. He knows that he would have gained an advantage if he had moved back on track ahead of Rugolo at that point, and therefore there's no option but to give the position to Michele Rugolo. So here is our race leader. Halfway through the final lap of the race, it has been a very solid start to the season for the Teo Martin Motorsport team. Oh no! Disaster for the Lamborghini Gallardo of Anton Neblitsky. They were all set for their best result of the year to date. We saw that car had dropped away from Phil Keane, and he's only made it through as far as Copse Corner. Just wonder whether or not that could be that he's run out of fuel, because he was pushing very, very hard in these late stages. For Teo Martin Motorsport and Miguel Ramos, they have been at the forefront of every race this year, Ramos and co-driver Alvaro Perent. And today it has been pretty much the perfect performance. Perent put the car on pole position, broke clear in the early stages, and then Miguel Ramos has been able to overhaul that deficit to Nicola Benucci through the pit handicaps as he turns through Brooklands for the final time. Just heads around Luffield, makes absolutely certain to have no mistake whatsoever, and then picks up the throttle, accelerating through Woodcote. It's going to be a first victory of the season in the International GTOpen for Teo Martin Motorsport. Miguel Ramos and Alvaro Perent, they win the 5th round of the season. Second place goes to Vallorba Course, Nicola Benucci and Alessandro Balzan, and then we have a long wait for third place as the teams celebrate on the pit wall. Third goes the way of Michele Rugolo, and passing the Thoras. Fourth, Ezequiel Perez-Compenac and Raffaele Giamaria. Fifth to Phil Keane and Sean Balfe. And then 6th place will be Emiliano Lopez and Matthias Russo. For Ramos, though, and Perent, plenty to celebrate, and with very good reason. So congratulations all around. That win has been a reasonably long time coming. And now Alvaro Perent can celebrate. Miguel Ramos has been at the sharp end of International GTOpen racing for several seasons now, but he hasn't claimed the championship. Maybe this year will be his year. It certainly started in the best possible way. As the cars head around to Parc Ferme, we will in due course be hearing from, I'm sure, a delighted Ramos, Alvaro Perent, as we've been treated to a thoroughly entertaining race. It maybe took a little bit of time to get going in the first half, but once the strategies played through, then the last 30 minutes or so, it really has crackled into another thrilling conclusion. Don't forget, the second race of the weekend for the International GTOpen gets underway at just after 1 o'clock British summertime tomorrow. So make sure that you do tune in for that one. Our coverage will start, as ever, about 10 minutes before the race itself does. So let's have a look then at the classification, with Alvaro Perent and Miguel Ramos winning it from Alessandro Balzan and Nicola Benucci, passing the Thoras and Michele Rugolo in third, and Rugolo also claiming the fastest lap of the race from Ezequiel Perez-Compenac and Raffaele Giamaria, then Phil Keane and Sean Balfe. Emiliano Lopez and Matthias Russo in 6th from Barrios and Rasmussen, and they win the GTAM trophy. Anton Neblitsky and Alvaro Barber heartbreak the Lamborghini, grinding to a halt just a couple of miles from home. Then Claudio Stanwich and Ilna Melnikov, and then Costa and Sardinia. So in terms of the championship then, well, Ramos and Perent moved to the top of the standings, 7 points their advantage over Thoras and Rugolo, with Benucci and Balzan still very much in the mix, as are Giamaria and Perez-Compenac. Applause from the Teo Martin Motorsport team as Miguel Ramos pops the gull wing on the car, climbs out and is ready to celebrate. He really worked hard for that one, but a huge thumbs up from Miguel Ramos as he goes to celebrate with Alvaro Perent and the rest of the team.